Under the wide, tired sky of the western frontier, the air hung with the scent of dusk and distance. The wind carried the dust of another long day across the barren hills, whispering through the lonely fences that guarded the empty land. Inside the small ranch house, Alicia moved quietly, her steps light, her hands trembling just enough to betray the storm she carried inside. The wooden floor creaked under her boots as she folded her few belongings, a faded blue dress, a worn shawl, a small bundle of letters tied with string. She packed each piece, as if tucking away her heart. The silence in the room felt heavy, almost watchful, like the walls themselves knew she was leaving. Her hair had come undone, loose waves brushing her shoulders as she bent to close the small trunk beside her bed. The fire in the hearth had burned to embers, the light dim and flickering like a final goodbye. 2 years she had lived under this roof, ever since Amos found her wandering after the fire that took her father's small homestead and all that once felt safe. 2 years of shared meals, wordless kindness, and distance that neither dared cross. She had come to believe she was little more than a shadow in this house, something taken in, fed, and kept out of pity. Her breath came out in a trembling sigh as she looked at the small wooden comb resting on the table, smooth and simple, carved by Amos himself last winter. He'd handed it to her with a half-smile and said it was nothing, just something to pass the long nights. But she'd seen the care in his hands, the way he shaped the wood as if it mattered. For a long moment she just stared at it, the firelight catching the grain, and she whispered, almost to herself, "It's time." She placed it gently in the trunk, shut the lid, and tied the rope around it. Every movement was quiet, deliberate, the sound of a woman trying to disappear without leaving a single ripple behind. Outside, the prairie stretched endless and silver beneath the rising moon. A coyote's cry echoed from far off, lonely and distant, a call that reminded her of everything she had lost. She stepped outside, the night air cold against her cheeks. The ranch yard was still, only the wind and the low rustle of horses shifting in their stalls. The lantern hanging by the barn glowed faintly. She saw Amos there, his tall frame bent over the wagon wheel, sleeves rolled to his elbows, his movements slow and sure. He always worked until the light died. A man who fixed things, fences, wagons, roofs, everything except himself. She hesitated. Her heart beat against her ribs, not fast, but deep, like something knocking from the inside, asking to be heard. She turned away before she could think too long. The horse waited at the post, saddled hours ago when the decision still felt far away. She lifted the trunk, her arms straining against the weight, and tied it behind the saddle. Her breath fogged in the cool air. One step closer to leaving. One step closer to being forgotten. Then came his voice, low, even unhurried, a voice that could calm a frightened horse or still the chaos in her chest. "You leavin', Alicia?" The sound of her name in the dark made her freeze. Her hands fell to her sides. The night held its breath with her. Slowly she turned. Amos stood a few yards away, the lantern light flickering over his face. He was 33, broad-shouldered, with eyes that held both grit and gentleness, the kind of man built by long silence and endless responsibility. His dark hair was tousled, his shirt open at the throat, sleeves dusted with dirt. He wasn't handsome in the polished way city men were. His strength was quieter, more weathered, the kind that came from surviving hard winters and harder regrets. She tried to speak, but her throat tightened. I thought it best," she finally said, her voice small, uncertain. "You've done enough for me, Amos. I can't keep staying here, talking what ain't mine." He looked at her a long time before answering. "What makes you think you ain't got a place here?" Her breath caught. "Because I see the way folks look. They whisper. A woman staying under a man's roof, no kin, no name. I don't want to be the kind of trouble you don't deserve." He stepped closer, slow and measured, like a man approaching a wild creature he doesn't want to scare off. "You think you're trouble?" he asked softly. She lowered her eyes. "I think I'm a reminder of what's broken." The wind stirred between them, lifting strands of her hair across her face. He didn't move to brush them aside, though the urge flickered in his eyes. He set the lantern down on a fence post, the flames swaying between them. "You help this place breathe, Alicia," he said quietly. "This ranch, it used to be just work and silence. Then you came, and somehow, the silence stopped hidden." Her lips trembled. "That's kindness talkin', not truth." He tilted his head, studying her face like he was seeing it for the first time. Not as the woman who cooked in his kitchen or mended his shirts, but as someone he might lose. "Kindness and truth ain't different things," he said. "Not when it comes from the right place." She looked up then, meeting his gaze fully. In that moment, something in her broke, not painfully, but like ice melting under sun. "You don't owe me any more words, Amos. You've given me more than most ever did." He shook his head, slowly. "You got it all wrong. You think this is about debt." His voice grew rough, low, but steady. "You ain't a weight I've been carryin'. You're the reason I still remember what peace feels like." Her throat tightened. She turned away, gripping the reins so hard her knuckles whitened. "Don't say things that ain't meant," she whispered. He took one more step toward her. The ground between them shrank until his shadow fell across hers. The horses went quiet. The night seemed to fold inward, every sound fading except the two of them breathing the same air. "Look at me," he said, and though his tone was soft, it carried the weight of truth. She hesitated, then slowly lifted her gaze. What she saw in his eyes wasn't pity, it was recognition, something deep and wordless. The kind of look that sees not what you've been through, but what you still could be. "You're not a burden, Alicia," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "You're the reason I stopped talking to ghosts." Her lips parted in disbelief. The word struck something raw and sacred inside her. For months she'd told herself she was temporary. A guest, a responsibility, a reminder of everything she'd cost the world. Now, in his steady gaze, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. A place to belong. She felt tears rise before she could stop them. One slipped down her cheek, catching the lantern light. She tried to hide it, turning her face away, but he moved closer, and in one unthinking moment, he reached out and caught her hand. His hand was rough, callous from work, yet warm, the kind of warmth that speaks without needing words. Her breath caught. The touch wasn't bold or claiming. It was steady, safe, real. She looked down at their joined hands, then up at him. The world seemed to fall away, no wind, no night, no sound but the quiet thunder of two hearts that had been waiting too long. Amos's voice came low, almost a whisper. "I used to think peace came from being alone. Thought if I kept my head down, worked the land, maybe I'd stop hurtin'. But then you came, quiet as a prayer I didn't know I was saying." Her eyes blurred. "Don't, please," she breathed, shaking her head. "Don't say things I can't bear to believe." He stepped closer, closing the last inch between them. "You think I'm saying this to make you stay out of pity?" he asked. "You don't see it, do you? Every day you left your laughter in this place, your care in the small things. You gave me back the sound of my own heart." His hand tightened around hers, not hard, just enough to keep her from slipping away. Her voice came out in a broken whisper. "You mean that?" He nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "More than I've meant anything since my life started breaking apart." She covered her mouth, a sob escaping before she could stop it. For so long she'd carried her pain in silence, believing that leaving was the only kindness she could offer. Now his confession cracked open something she thought was long dead, the simple human need to be seen and chosen. Her tears fell freely, not from sorrow, but release. He pulled her closer, slow and careful, as if afraid she might vanish. She let him, her head resting against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath his worn shirt. The scent of smoke and leather filled her lungs. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe fully. "I thought leaving was the only way to stop hurting people," she whispered. He pressed his forehead gently to hers. "Maybe staying's the only way to start healing." The lantern flickered beside them. The horse snorted softly. The world seemed to exhale. Her trunk, once so carefully tied, slipped from the saddle and landed in the dirt with a dull thud, forgotten. She didn't look back at it. Amos's hand stayed in hers, grounding her to this moment, this truth, this man who had seen every broken part of her and found something worth holding on to. When she finally lifted her gaze, the night sky was stretching pale with the first hint of dawn. The silence was no longer empty, it was full. Full of promises unspoken, of the kind of peace that comes only after storm. Amos looked down at her, a faint, almost shy smile ghosting his lips. "You stayin', then?" he murmured. She laughed through her tears, soft and breathless. "Only if you promise not to let me pack again." He smiled, quiet certain forever. The rising sun spilled gold over the prairie, lighting the ranch like a benediction. Two souls, once lost to loneliness, now stood hand in hand, their silence turned to belonging. And in that fragile light of morning, she finally understood. Sometimes love doesn't save you with grand gestures. Sometimes it just catches your hand when you try to walk away and refuses to let go. Before you ride off, tell me where in the wide world you're watching from.